key purpose of leading with fundamentals is to find a way to get every person in the organization, everybody, to be able to make decisions that either safeguard or improve your competitive advantage. And the key thing is everyone. I mean, we do this with, there's a lot of people within the organization that are making good decisions, but there's a lot of people that work in the organization that are making decisions every day that are with good intention, but maybe not the best decision. Some of the keynotes mentioned some things that tie into this. BJ was talking about needing to change mindsets. Dan was talking about needing to create simplicity, have clear, simple messages, have a purpose, and have cast members that can make a decision they feel the VP would make. That's what leading with fundamentals should get into. Jose, sitting here, talked about people suffocating and a need to create an environment of trust, collaboration, etc., like you would have in an agile environment. Jeff quoted Michael Jordan, says, get the fundamentals down and the level of everything else you do will go up. That's true. And Ross had mentioned it all comes down to making better decisions. So we'll talk more. This is basically going to lead to how do you get everybody in the organization making good decisions. A lot of what I'm going to go through seems ultra basic, but it's not when you step back and think, for you it's ultra basic, but there's going to be other people, if you think about, is it ultra basic, is it basic for everybody? Maybe not. And you have to think of everybody in the organization, and that's the key point of all of this. So we're going to cover some things today. It looks like a lot, but it really isn't. What is leading with fundamentals? We're going to introduce you to a squishy to black and white spectrum. We'll talk about making competitive advantage simple for everybody to talk about, going beyond mission, mission, values, looking at the three other basic fundamentals that everybody should know and probably don't. That's really important for making good decisions around competitive advantage. Why 3, not 2 or 4? If anybody wrote an article I put together, this is really why I'm looking at 3 fundamentals beyond advantage, competitive advantage, vision, mission, values, and the other 3. Why it's 3, not more, not less. I'm going to go through 3 examples pretty quick. I'm going to go through a quick overview of the example, the results, and the fundamentals that were applied to create a culture to get those results. And we'll revisit what a winning culture looks like. I'll talk about that along the way. And then sort of a pause to say what fundamentals would you choose for your organization. So talked about leading with fundamentals, increasing the probability that any decision made in your organization will safeguard or improve your competitive advantage. It's all about managing the squishy to black and white spectrum. And if you think about it, black and white's like the things that are your SOPs, guidelines, regulations. The squishies where we're making decisions that aren't quite covered there, but there are things you have to make decisions about all day long. And when you think about it, it's really like this. Black and white, with the easy things to do, the yes, no's, right, wrongs, it's really this little band here. The rest of it's really a squishy to crazy squishy spectrum where you have got people at every level of your organization having to make decisions every day. They're in that world, and when they make decisions in that world, they're either going to hurt, safeguard, or improve your competitive advantage. So this methodology is going to help increase the probability that they safeguard or improve your competitive advantage. And you can tell I focus on competitive advantage. And again, just putting it out there again, can't say it enough times, it's really about making decisions to safeguard and improve competitive advantage. So when I do this in a 3-step process, and it's the first 2 are pretty quick, the second one requires a lot of thought, discipline, and follow through. The third one. So the first one is understand the 3 states of business relative to competitive advantage. I have a way to simply do that where you can introduce it to people very quickly, and it makes it easier to start talking about where you are, how you're performing relative to your competitive advantage. The second one is awareness and understanding of some basic business fundamentals. This is where we will go beyond vision, mission, values. And the last one is selecting 3 key fundamentals that embody your current strategy. And what they're going to do is they're going to be these fundamentals you're going to select that are tied to your strategy, but you're picking them to match your organization. So you're going to pick fundamentals that are going to you're going to be able to execute your strategy, get to your end game, but you're going to tailor everything to what you know about your organization and what they're going to need to keep in mind as they're making decisions while they're executing your strategy. So, competitive advantage made simple. I've used this for years. You could probably guess what those graphs stand for, right? So when I talk to people, I say, there are 3 states of our business relative to competitive advantage. It's real, and at any given moment in time, you should be able to pause and say, what state are we in? So you have first state, gaining your competitive advantage. Anybody guess what the second state is? Losing. Anybody guess what the third one is? Ooh. Or out of business.
Oh, wow.
Right? So there's no such thing as staying the same. And everybody needs to understand that everybody's very comfortable saying, wow, we're sustaining. No such thing. It's really important people understand that. That at any given moment in time, you're either gaining or losing competitive advantage. So you should be able to stop and say, hey, let's see how things are going. Do I feel like we're gaining or losing competitive advantage today? And then you have out of business. And I'll give you a story about Oob. I used to do this without Oob, just gaining, losing, out of business. And I'd go back a week later and I'd say, hey, remember those 3 states of business relative to competitive advantage? And so everybody would say, yeah, gaining, losing, and staying the same. It's like, and what you find is that people are really comfortable to stay the same. They like that. That's just a really comfortable place to be. So I went with Oob, and people remembered Oob, or out of business, or at a minimum, they remembered that it wasn't staying the same. It was something else. So feel free to use this. It's simple, but it has good impact, and it's something that can guide conversations. You can walk up to someone and say, hey, how are we doing today? Are we gaining or losing competitive advantage? Right? And more importantly, everybody amongst themselves, again, we're doing this to every person in the organization, everybody amongst themselves can talk about, hey, I think we're losing competitive advantage today because look what's going on over here. Okay, beyond vision, mission, values. Everybody knows the vision, mission, values, right? Everybody here in the room, if I ask you, you can tell me what they are. You can recite them for me, right? I have some yeses and a lot of heads are staying still. The cool thing about these is they're going to be on your website, they're going to be hanging on the walls in your building, they're going to be in literature someplace. You've probably read them, and you can go back and find them again. But the important thing here is that, one, you should know them, but everybody in your organization should know them, or at least where to find them. I mean, I'm not going to try to memorize them because, unless it's like a 3-word vision, I'm not going to remember it, right? But at least know where to find it and have it as a reference point and train people to go back to it. Now, there are 3 other ones that are not so common that are super important for maintaining competitive advantage. Core competencies, strategic excellence positions, and critical success factors. How many of you in this room, for your business, can tell me what those were for your business? I would venture a guess that you have a good idea of what they are. But how many of you with 100% certainty can say, I'm going to write down what these are, and you can go to my CEO and he's going to tell you the exact same thing? That's a tough one, but everybody should be aligned to these things, right? And it's really important for everybody, again, we're talking about everybody in the organization to understand this is what we're good at, we can't mess it up. This is why people do business with us, we can't mess it up. And these are all the things we have to do well, let's keep an eye on them. And it's important for everybody to know those things, but if you stop and pause and think about your organization, and you can define an organization however you want. A global company, everybody, your department, a plant, it could be a process, the people involved in a process. Define it however you want, the rules will apply. But everybody needs to know these and be aligned to these to be able to make good decisions that will either safeguard or improve your competitive advantage. If they're not, there's a higher probability they're going to hurt your competitive advantage. So why 3, not 2 or 4? This really is why 3, not less than 3 or more than 3 when you're talking about picking these next 3 fundamentals you're going to pick around your strategy. And if there's a logic to it, if you think syllogisms, you remember studying syllogisms, you had a major premise, minor premise, conclusion. An example would be, all people are good, Aristotle's a person, Aristotle's good. And if you think of a major premise as a fundamental, the minor premise as a decision path you're considering, or someone in your organization is considering, and the conclusion about whether or not that decision would be good or bad based on being evaluated to the fundamental, one can get you in trouble. Because if this is a fundamental, all people are good, you can come up with Aristotle's good, but you can also come up with these are people, thieves are good. So one's not so good. And what I've found over time is that 2 gets you better, but not quite good enough. 3 gets you pretty good. You're probably better than 80-20 if you go to 3. And if you go to more than 3, if you get into some of your process automation and you have computers doing things, that might work. But for people, you get to more than 3, people are just going to stop making decisions. So just stick to 3. It seems to work. So again, major premise, fundamentals, minor premise, decision path, conclusions. So that's the logic with this. This is how people think. Now, you might have a group that you're going to share this with or share the methodology with. You just need to know this is how people think. This is how we do deductive reasoning. This is just human, right? So you have to think that you're giving them the tools to go through this process as they're making decisions. You might have a group that would be happy to learn about this. Great, but you don't need to do that. Again, this is all about measuring or managing that squishy to crazy squishy spectrum. It's all about managing how people are making decisions in that and helping those decisions be good, to be something positive for your company. Okay, I'm going to go through 3 examples now really quick. These are all personal experience examples. I didn't hear them from someone, I didn't make them up. And the leading with fundamentals approach was applied to them and they worked. So successful startup, making microwave popcorn. Everybody remember when microwave popcorn first came out? I might be dating myself here, but in the 80s. And you bought it and not all the kernels popped? I helped make sure all the kernels popped. And so what you had is an industry that they were using a technology that made sense for this, but they weren't used to holding the tight tolerances that were required to make the popcorn pop. So sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't good. So within 6 months of my getting involved in this industry, the customer that I was dealing with, a primary customer at the time, their approval rating for people that were buying this metallized film that popped popcorn went from 3 to 6 months to immediately. Pretty good. And the 3 to 6 month approval rate was typically because people couldn't make good stuff and they had to prove that they could at least sort it out. Customer yield went from less than 50% to greater than 98%. People who started implementing this technology could go to the market at a reduced price and make more money. There was an industry benchmark made, and the magical and awesome thing that happened here is we had customers call us and pay us to come visit them to sell us their systems. It's a niche market, perfect timing. It'll never happen again. But it was a perfect storm and it worked well. The fundamentals applied here were, 1, we need to satisfy our customers' customers. 2, every system has to perform the same worldwide. There were quality systems, so they had to all be the same. And all products must be easy to use, no manuals required. And everybody in my organization, wasn't a big organization, but everybody in it knew that this was important. So if we were going to look at something, we were going to measure it to these fundamentals. Not quite the fundamentals you'd think about if you're talking about strategy, right? A little different. On to the next one. So the last one was a startup. This is applying it to a process. And this was a new product development process. And in this new product development process, there was a cross-border logistics component, because you had a US company designing in the United States, buying all their parts, and then sending it to their factory in Mexico to build, and then sending it back to them. But what happened was, getting those parts into Mexico was taking days, and in some cases weeks. So that was not good for new product development. Speed is everything when you're looking at speed to market. So we mapped out what the present state was, not important in those boxes, just important there's a lot of boxes. And we looked at what the ideal state would be. And then with the 3 fundamentals we'll talk about, we developed a training that went through the current state on the left and used those fundamentals to explain how not following those fundamentals created those boxes, the need for those boxes on the chart. Within 30 days of that training, we had improved speed to market, 68% reduction in activities required, 67% reduction in organizational involvement required. The import process was improved from days. Our target was to get it to about a day to 2 days to get across. We got it down to hours. And internal and external customers were all satisfied. The fundamentals, good information is imperative, timely information is imperative, good communication and planning is needed. For everybody in this room, everybody's going, duh, right? I mean, this is stuff, why wouldn't you have this? But this was a cross-border logistics process. People weren't thinking about this, and communication and good information was important. You have regulatory agencies, you have your customs, you have brokers you're talking about, you have English, Spanish language, you have other languages because you had engineers at the company that English was their second language and the first one wasn't Spanish. So you had a lot of, this wound up being the fundamentals we had to do for that process that got us those results. And in the training, we tied all the training to that, and the communication was tied to these fundamentals. Another important thing about doing this, leading with fundamentals, is when you come up with these fundamentals, all your training is tied to them, your communication is tied to them, you're having meetings, you're trying to roll right back to how what you're talking about ties into one of those things. The third example was an operational transformation. In 1 year, what we were producing with 450 people, we were able to produce with 270 people in 75% of the space. And some of those people went away by attrition, we just didn't replace them. The people that were left, we brought in new work in the other 25%. And we were able to use the same amount of people, have more revenue, more work. So in this case, the result was we had outputs, we had higher quality, improved on-time delivery with 40% less personnel, 25% less floor space, and 75% less inventory. Anybody who's ever been in the manufacturing world, if you can improve your on-time delivery with 75% less inventory, that's magical and awesome. And in this, what I don't have noted here is that on-time delivery most of the time was 100% and it was with reduced lead times from what we had before. Fundamentals, good customer perception is important. Positive trends are mandatory. Avoid them and they use names. Again, not things you would think of when you're thinking about how am I going to roll out my strategy. These aren't the type of things you normally think of. But again, we're talking about these are things you need to communicate to every single employee in your organization. They need to understand these and how they tie to your strategy. And then it's going to be part of their training, and it's going to be part of their regular communication, and it's going to be points that they can use, every employee can use as they talk amongst each other, whether in their groups, cross-functionally, whenever. So, most important thing about all these results, and this concept of leading with fundamentals, it's really more about changing how people think than changing how they did things. In a startup, yeah, it might affect how you do things because you haven't done them before and you're doing new things, but at the end of the day, it's how people think. In the process, we didn't change anything about that. The end process had all the same steps the previous process had. We just changed the way people think, and there was a whole bunch of steps they didn't need to do anymore. In the operational transformation, it was changing how people thought because these are products that have been made for decades, lots of them. We didn't change the way we made the products, but we made them with 40% less people and 75% of the space by changing the way people thought. And there's a lot of training that went into this and exercise that I can't fit into 30 minutes in sharing, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But this is a pretty key point, changing how people think, changing how people did things. And if you listen to a lot of the talks in here, this is a lot of what people are saying. I mean, it's real easy to jump to the process. Something's going wrong. Let's look at the process. Let's map out the process, right? Let's look at how we can streamline the process. But now what have you got? You've got a process that's better, and Rias has just taught just a perfect example of this. He had everybody, I don't know, did anybody see the Rias's talk from Caesars? He had everybody write their name and time out how long it took to write their name. Then he improved the process where you only had to write half the letters. Write your name down, but leave out every other letter and see how long it takes. So he improved the efficiency, improved the amount of work you had to do. You reduced it by 50%, but now it took longer. So when you got to be careful when you're streamlining processes that you are. Lose my thought here. When you're streamlining processes, that oftentimes you could be creating a requirement for some change management now that everything's going to take longer. It's better you change the way people think, then let them change the process, rather than feeling the need to go change it for them. Okay. So winning culture, I define it as when it can quickly pivot and evolve to meet the changing needs of your markets. I've defined it like this since before I heard the word agile applied term to anything. You have a complex, dynamic business world. You require speed on all fronts. I mean, and speed's really important. And if you're doing this and people are thinking and being able to make the right decisions at every level, you're going to do things faster. Nobody ever said go slow, right? They might say slow down to go fast, but nobody wants to go slow. And you need to deliver high-value consistency and scale fast. And again, scaling fast is really critical, because if you can use all of your innovative energy, creative energy, to come up with some high value and do it consistently, but you can't scale fast, someone else is going to take all your work you did and run with it instead of you. And one of the issues with scaling fast that makes it difficult is because things don't go perfect. You plan things, but they don't go perfect. So what you need all of these people. Every single person in your organization has to be able to make good decisions that will safeguard and improve your competitive advantage, that will also help you scale fast. Again, this ability to quickly pivot and evolve, it exists at every level of the organization. And it typically requires no intervention from management to occur, because what's happening now is everybody's making good decisions. And you are going to start seeing this magical and awesome thing start to happen, because you're gonna worry about something, because everybody worries about something, right? And you're gonna go over there, and it's gonna be awesome because they already took care of it. And not only did they take care of it, they took care of it maybe in a way that was better than you ever considered them being able to take care of it, but they already took care of it. And so the intervention from management now that, I mean, yes, there's the day-to-day stuff, there's the management, there's the people things, there's the metrics, all of that stuff. But when it comes to the fundamentals, what management and leadership now can do is they can take a step back and just keep reevaluating those fundamentals to the strategy and to where your organization is now evolving. So you might need to tweak your fundamentals. And this has another big win, because now if you've taught everybody to work to fundamentals, when you change the fundamentals, that's not such a big change. Because you can go to everybody and say, you know what, we were doing these three things because of this, but this changed, so instead of doing these three, we're going to do these three. Now maybe some are the same, some are different. But now they don't have to change what they're doing because they're still applying three fundamentals. It's not a whole different way of doing business. And then they can go out and make decisions and make the tweaks that need to happen for things to be magical and awesome out there, where you don't need somebody to go and redefine everything to it, redesign everything, retrain everybody, re-get buy-in. It's just happening organically. So, what fundamentals would you choose? If you think about this now, it gets a little more difficult now, because if you look at the fundamentals for each one of those examples I picked, again, that's not something that would have come to your mind at first. When you saw the title of this talk and you came in here, you weren't thinking anything like this for fundamentals, I am fairly certain. Was anybody thinking something like this? Does it make you see things a little differently when you're thinking through how you communicate to your people and the direction you're giving to them to try to, one, keep it simple. You know, simple is really important. But two, give them that something that they could make decisions to. Or not just make decisions to, but say, you know what, we need to satisfy our customers for this, I don't know. Can you please come help me? And now I need to ask a question because I really don't know this. But when you look at this, and I call it creating a winning culture because, like Rhea said in his last talk, he said, nobody wants to lose, right? You don't want to lose. But this leading with fundamentals is, once you get the 3 states of business relative to competitive advantage understood, and that's pretty simple, the way it's laid out there. You have your business basics understood, your vision, mission, values, and your core competencies, strategic excellence positions, and critical success factors. That's all great, but you need this. And I think what you'll find is every time you've had a success in any of your leadership roles, if you go back in retrospect, you did this. You might not have understood what the mechanics were, but you did this. You communicated well. You had a simple message. You were consistent with your message. Your message was embedded in everything. You may have, in your mind, developed what the message was without thinking that you were doing this. And then you went into another situation, maybe it was another job, and you went to do the same thing and it didn't quite work. So this is a way sort of to have the mechanics behind some of that thought process so that you can go from one place to another and stay successful. Does that make sense? Okay, so that was my talk on creating a winning culture by leading with fundamentals. I really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you very much.